Thanks so much for having me again. Yeah, I think we knew that this was going to be an extremely close fight. I think that's to the credit of the opposition, this coalition of six parties, with support from some other parties as well, that have been able to put forward this contest against an authoritarian regime that has used sort of all the tools in its toolkit to try to ensure that they stay in power. So I think it's remarkable that Recep Tayyip Erdogan was not able to call victory on the first night.
Yeah, but now, of course, he got 49% to 45% from his opponent. Who do you think this is going to now favour as one of them drops out? And he had around 5% of the vote, did he not?
He did have around 5% of the vote, and he is a hardline nationalist. And that is an ideological position that the opposition coalition has been trying to move away from in order to try to attract the Kurdish vote and in order to get support from the pro-Kurdish party, which again isn't a formal part of that coalition, but did lend its support to it. So it seems as though Erdogan is going to kind of try to ramp up the nationalist rhetoric in order to attract some of those voters. I think that the opposition coalition is going to have a difficult time to try to get some of those nationalist voters while keeping the Kurds on board. So I think in that sense, Erdogan has a bit of an easier time in attracting the nationalist vote.
Yeah, interesting. Erdogan's party also won a majority in parliament. So what might this mean for whoever goes on to win the presidency?
So this is the key factor, not only in what it means for the person who wins the presidency, but who wins the presidency. Because Erdogan's AKP, the Justice and Development Party, in an electoral alliance with the ultra-right nationalist party, the Nationalist Action Party, was able to secure a majority in parliament, that means he can use the argument that if you really want to get things done, you probably don't want a president from an opposition coalition and us in parliament. So I think he's really going to press on, if you want economic growth, if you want us to get out of this economic crisis, if you want rebuilding after the earthquake, you're going to want me as your president.
Yeah, but talking of the earthquake, it was interesting to see in those party strongholds where the earthquake hit, they didn't lose as much ground as may have been expected.
That's absolutely right. And that's something that we talked about last time. In provinces like Kahramanmaraş, where you did see a tremendous amount of devastation, and in the few days following the earthquake, people asking, where's the state? You know, where are the search and rescue efforts? Where's the humanitarian aid? The fact that we didn't see a large shift in voter preferences, I think, speaks to the challenges that the opposition had in trying to convince people to vote for them, that they could, as this ideologically diverse coalition of six parties, you know, convince voters that they'll be able to get things done. Turkey has a history of sort of unstable coalitions in the past that weren't able to govern very effectively. Yeah. So I think that although there was a lot of outrage in the first days after the earthquake, people sort of thought, or a lot of people thought, well, you know, sort of better the devil I know. And he's promised to give us some handouts. Erdogan in the past month has increased the minimum wage. He has done a lot of sort of the kinds of populist economic policies we'd expect to try to get voters on board.
You know, we saw the markets tumble, the currency has taken a tumble. Is that an indication that they are concerned that Erdogan might be returned?
I think that's the case. And in fact, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the opposition candidate, had sort of taken heart that investor confidence seemed to be rising based on the fact that he was, as the polls were showing, it turns out not very accurately, that he was going to perhaps be able to secure a victory in the first round. But I think that investor confidence is truly worried about Erdogan as an unchecked president who does not have, you know, an independent central bank, does not have this kinds of institutional checks and balances on his governance. I think that's where you're starting to see some of that concern from investors.
Yeah, and also, of course, you know, the international relationships with Erdogan are fairly fractious at the moment. So this could be quite difficult for Turkey going forward.
I think that's the case. And, you know, Erdogan has at times kind of used this bombastic anti-Western nationalist foreign policy to rally his base at home. He won't necessarily have to do that if he is elected in the second round. But it's not just a campaign tactic. You know, this is part of his belief about Turkey should be this extraordinarily strong power, that it is kind of turning away from what it sees as a US that has betrayed it by arming the Syrian Kurdish militia, for example, by an EU that has betrayed it, by, in Erdogan's eyes, leaving too many Syrians on Turkish soil. So, you know, his partnerships with Russia and with some other countries that, you know, NATO members are worried about, I think are those that he sees as Turkey's way forward, not only to allow Turkey to be this really strong power on the international scene, but also to help it get out of economic crisis.
Yeah, well, we will watch and wait and see how the second runoff goes. Good to have you on, Lisel. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.